Why I fell in love with the game and the CRPG genre. Divinity Original Sin 2 is the first ever isometric CRPG I've ever dove into. Not knowing if I'd like the game or the style, I caught it on sale on Steam one day and decided to give it a shot. This game absolutely blew me away and changed my outlook on what a quality RPG can be if properly executed. Divinity Original Sin 2 approaches with a very old school, old fashioned Dungeons and Dragons type of feel with how combat, creation, and choices play out. Very similar to games such as the Pathfinder series or Baldur's Gate, which is also being worked on by Larian Studios. One major pro to this game I would tell new players about, and I recommend this video is more so recommended for new players, is the fact that Divinity, unlike those other games I mentioned, does not use dice rolls for combat. Playing Baldur's Gate 3 and other tactical themed CRPGs and games based on Dungeons and Dragons, they use the dice systems in the Dungeons and Dragons books for combat and other actions, but this is specifically for combat. I found that when you use the dice rolls, it can prolong combat and make it a more frustrating experience due to RNG. And if you are a newer player to this type of genre, it's harder to understand how the dice roll works and how to use an ability to enhance a dice roll, as opposed to Divinity 2 just using a flat percentage that's easy to read, and of course you can buff in either genre. It's just easier for a newer player to understand, hey, this action is plus 5% to my accuracy as opposed to plus 2d to something. That kind of thing. Of course, you may still get unlucky time to time with percentages and RNG. That's how these that's how these action points and all this work. You could still have a 95% chance and whiff. That's part of it. But I've never found myself frustrated at how long or difficult a fight was due to the randomness of the dice roll. I gave this game a chance, and it's left an impression on me in terms of game quality that I now look at every other game with, and I feel it's at least worth a try to anyone else who loves a good role-playing game and or story. Upon beginning your campaign, which can be solo or with up to 3 other friends in co-op, online or offline, you're given a character creation screen with a few origin characters that have in-game unique quest lines and stories that tie to each individual character. Or, if you so choose, you can select a regular character, basically a blank slate with no background of your choice. You can, however, customize all characters, origin and not origin included, to look like whatever you want. So if you feel like picking an origin character and playing through the story, you can customize them as much as you want to make it feel like your own, basically. Upon beginning to customize your own character, you have a few basic options between hairstyles, facial hair, and skin tone. It's not the most basic customizer I've ever used, but not really the most in-depth either. After you're done customizing, you reach the preset tab where you can begin working on your class and abilities. This is where the game lets you decide what path you want your character to take in terms of gameplay. Strength, finesse, intelligence, constitution, memory, and wits are the attribute selections you're given. With each level up, you can put at least 2 points into your attributes, but these are ways to increase that, as you'll find out through experimenting. Each tab has a description that goes into detail to explain what each attribute, ability, and move/spell does. So that way you won't have to make a decision without knowing what you're speccing into, so that way you're not regretting what choice you made. There's also a way to respec in this game, so your choices here are not permanent if you don't like them as you play. You can eventually respec, that way don't ever feel like when you make a combat or leveling character decision, you are stuck. You can respec. You can also respec your AI party members as well. After you decide your attributes, you can then pick up your combat abilities. These let you go further in depth with what your character can do, and the freedom the game allows starts to shine here in this menu. Do you want to be an elemental wizard that can cast everything? You can. Sword and bow? You can. Thief and lifesteal? Or summon the dead? You can. Each combat ability will affect things like how much damage you can deal and other unique qualities. For example, points into Scoundrel unlock those sneaky thief type abilities, but they also have an effect on your movement speed around the map as well as your critical modifier for all abilities. Warfare increases all physical damage you do, so things like melee weapons and range weapons. It also impacts necromancy spells because they do physical damage as well. These combat abilities can be more than meets the eye sometimes, so be sure to consider all options. Huntsman increases your damage bonus when attacking from high ground. Great for archers as well as spellcasters that you position high up for a tactical advantage. Pyrokinetic allows you to deal more fire damage. Hydrosophist increases the damage of all your water abilities while also allowing you to be able to cast restoration spells that heal or restore magic armor. Aerothurge increases things like wind and electricity. Geomancer increases your earth and poison damage you deal while allowing you to restore physical armor. Necromancer heals you whenever you do damage directly to an enemy's HP. Great for lifesteal builds and replenishing yourself over the course of a fight. Summoning is one of my personal favorites. You can summon incarnates, totems, and creatures that scale off of your summoning level. You can also give them extra armor and abilities. Polymorph provides one extra attribute point each time you invest in Polymorph. Polymorph still gives you spells and things like that when you invest in it, so you still unlock things, such as skill books, spells, examples like that. And some of those abilities are the most broken, overpowered ones in the game. For weapons, you have single-handed, two-handed, ranged, and dual-wielding. Wands and staves fall into one-handed and two-handed, respectively. Putting points into these categories impact how much damage, as well as how high your critical multiplier is when attacking with these weapons. There are also defensive abilities you can put points into for more of a tanky role. Retribution reflects damage back to your attacker. Leadership grants dodging and resistance bonuses to all allies in range. Perseverance affects the amount of armor you restore, physical or magical, when recovering from crowd control. And crowd control is a very, very important thing in this game. For the Civil Abilities tab, you can choose from Telekinesis, how much weight you can move with your mind, Lore Master, the ability to identify unidentified items instead of paying to discover them, Sneaking, your ability to stay hidden when moving around the map, Thievery, the ability to pick locks in the world. Also, if you're an undead character, you use your finger, which means you have unlimited lockpicks. Bartering, the prices for which you buy and sell, Persuasion, which affects speech checks and Lucky Charm. Random chests in the world may have more gold or items. You then select 3 skills you want to start off the game with, based on what combat abilities you chose to raise in the preset tab. After this, you go to the Talents tab. These are like perks that enhance your character to be able to do certain things. For example, one talent may extend your range on all spell and ranged actions. One may make you more resistant to fire or water damage. And finally, you can select what style of instrument plays the background music for you in the game. After you select your music, if you pick an undead character, you will receive a warning that most people will attack you if they ever see your face, since you are literally the Walking Dead. Helmets and hoods can hide you, though, and give off a human impression. Another mechanic is poison heals undead, and restoration spells damage them. You can also walk around in Death Fog, an environment status that is an instant kill on all living creatures. You're then treated to a lore cutscene that explains how current situation came to be. You're then put on the good old tutorial boat. Since the story is one of the strongest suits of the game, I'll be trying to avoid spoilers and avoiding story events, so hopefully new players can enjoy a fresh experience all the way through. After you complete the tutorial boat, you wash up in the first area of the game, Fort Joy. I'll now use this time to talk about how I really enjoy the combat. The animations look incredible. The amount of skills and ways to approach combat make for a fresh experience with every encounter. And as I mentioned with the skills earlier, as you level up, merchants and world items will scale with your level, so you'll begin to see the benefits of putting multiple points into categories, such as pyrokinetic, like a big fucking laser. Also, you'll begin to see skills that have multiple requirements. For example, a spell that lets you summon a giant spider made out of bones requires points in the summoning and necromancy combined. And every RPG type game I play, I gravitate towards summoning if it's in the game personally. I always enjoy that playstyle and the idea of being able to summon stronger and stronger things or enhance them to fight for me. Divinity does something really awesome where at one point, you can summon an incarnate. At 10 summoning points, you can summon an incarnate champion, and champion it does. It goes from a goblin-type creature to a juggernaut on the battlefield with abilities of its own. Another really cool feature that I like that adds to the tactical element are how elements interact with each other. Say I use a rain spell, or a blood rain spell, / cause somebody to bleed, and then cast an Aerotheurge ability with electricity. You can then stun them with paralysis. However, if you use water by itself, they just gain the wet status, or electricity by itself, they just become shocked. When you combine the two, it becomes a deadly combo. In pre-fights, you can set up large areas of the fight with oil or water, then from a safe distance, begin the combat with a fire or Aerotheurge spell, and watch the battlefield be covered in chaos. Very rarely have I played a game with interactions like this with abilities and chain effects that also look pretty amazing. You eventually gain access to source points that let you cast these almost like ultimate abilities, and the payoff is huge. You don't get to generate an infinite amount of source points, nor will you always have some on you to burn unless you're very meticulous. So whenever you do have them and you're in a tough fight, they can absolutely be a game changer. Divinity 2 takes an interesting approach with Fort Joy, the starting area being one of the hardest things to beat in the game. By no means does this mean the rest of the game is a cakewalk, but it truly gives you the feeling of being a prisoner on this fort. Gold is limited, armor and weapons are limited. Most fights, if you play on classical or harder, will require trial and error or planning before the fight to win these encounters. And I absolutely love that feeling. If I'm a prisoner on this fort, my source powers are locked away by the collar on my neck, there should be struggles or problems with dealing with armed guards or wild creatures. You shouldn't be able to just run through everything and one-shot everything. It makes the encounters feel extremely rewarding every time you win one. There are unique bosses in this game that have mechanics or gimmicks or hard stats at different stages, and the feeling of accomplishment when beating after not giving up or struggling to win and then you finally do is euphoric. However, as I said earlier, one thing you will notice with this game is freedom of choice. A lot of fights or situations you encounter have many, and I mean many ways to deal with it. After I beat the game, I was still learning of neat tricks you could do in Fort Joy that I never would have even thought possible. Exploration and creativity can open up so many possibilities for you as a player in Divinity. One of my favorite features of the story is how many options you have. You have each unique origin character that you can play as, each with their own personal story. You can do some of these stories in your party with the perspective of an ally helping them. However, if you actually play that character, you will experience everything in first person. This adds to the replay value along with playstyles and difficulties. Also adding to this, the game is similar to the other popular RPGs that choices you make at different stages in the game can affect the ending. You can impact the ending you get at several different moments in the game. Some are obvious. Some decisions you make may not impact you till way later in the game and make you think of what if. What if you had spared that one person? Maybe killed someone instead. Maybe discovered something you were missing. Maybe a different dialogue option. As well as you can fail quests or completely break quests by killing random NPCs. There won't be a message saying this person is important. You could change the whole flow of the story killing someone that has some hidden side to them and you never know it. All these lead to those what ifs I mentioned earlier, and I think that's one of the greatest things an RPG can do. Keep you wondering if you made the right choice. Keep you in tune with the fact that my decision matters. That's about as far as I can go without spoiling any story. This game has shown me what an excellent RPG can play and feel like. Made me curious about the Dungeons and Dragons style of games, as well as opened my mind to trying out isometric RPGs. As a gamer, I feel like discovering a new game or a new style of game that I really enjoy and can sink hours upon hours into really just brings me joy. And I hope if you try this game out, you can experience a similar joy. Thank you for watching the video. If you made it to the end, this took me about 16 to 18 hours to edit, basically, as I try to figure out what niche I want to do for my YouTube channel going forward. I'll probably make more narrative-driven content like this until the Paragon remakes come out in the winter. So this will be the type of content I make going forward. Till then, leave any feedback on what you think I could have done better, what I did good, things like that. And I appreciate you for watching to the end. Thanks.